Welcome to Bolotor, where we dive deep into the minds of extraordinary individuals. Today, we're thrilled to introduce you to Michael Dunphy, a wandering surf guy who's breaking barriers and inspiring millions.
People get bit all the time. So like surfing here a lot, I have run-ins with them all the time. Like I have a few videos of a drone and stuff over top of me, and there's like legitimately like 10 sharks all under me.
Join us as we explore Michael Dunphy's story, from their humble beginnings to their incredible achievements. Discover the challenges they've overcome, the passions that drive them, and the lessons they've learned along the way.
All right, here with Michael Dunphy. We're going to talk about some surfing. We're going to talk about, maybe sharks, right? We talked about in the pregame, but we're going to get into
shark stories.
Yeah, but let's talk about you. Tell us a little about yourself, like where you're from. Where'd you first start surfing? Was it Virginia Beach? Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up surfing. Beach was there, and eventually, as I, being a surfer in Virginia Beach can be a bit of a struggle because there's not the most consistent waves, and the winter times are cold. So I'm living down in Florida now, and then I'm also traveling a lot for surfing, all over the world. So I still have the East Coast roots, but I'm stay busy with all the travel.
The waves, and when you grew up, how big are the swells? How big were they decent?
It's pretty bad. Like the Virginia Beach surf community would, they'd give me a little punch if they heard that. But they know it. It's not the best place in the world for surfing, but there's a strong community there, and we all just we're frothing young kids, just putting on two different wetsuits being kids because you had to stay warm. And the surf is bad, but we would have the Outer Banks, which is like 2 hours away, which gets a little bit better. And it just kept us hungry. Once I was able to travel, it made you that much more frothed out to be a surfer in some real waves.
What about when there was a hurricane? Were you one of those guys that said, okay, well, here we go, let's do some of this?
Yeah, that was like our saving grace. September, October is like hurricane season. And we're the weirdos that want the hurricanes. Most people, property owners on the East Coast, are like wanting those things that don't even exist. But the surfers, we're rubbing our hands together, seeing those come to life. Usually the best is when they stay off the coast because you don't get the weather and you get the surf and keeps everyone safe. But that's what we, as an East Coast surfer, that's like your bread and butter is the hurricanes.
All right. So first big meet, what does that look like? And then when do you start to hit kind of critical mass where you're like, oh, I'm getting a little bit of a stride here in your career?
Yeah. There wasn't I guess there was a few, we would do the nationals you'd go out to California and surf at Lower Trestles. And that's like the epicenter of USA surfing. And it did that and then would do pretty well in that, and that led into the USA surf team. And then that's when I kind of dropped out of school and was like, all right, I'm gonna go for this pretty hard now that I can compete at a national level, and just kind of took it from there.
On that note, they were talking about making surfing an Olympic sport?
Yeah, this past Olympics over in Tokyo was the first year surfing was in the Olympics.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so it's becoming a bit more professional for sure.
That's exciting. So now, What was when you first started, hitting your stride? What was going on? Where was that? Would you remember? I want to get into some scary shit, whatever. But I want to know when you really started to hit for you. Yeah,
I would say when I was 16, 17, and I started traveling to Hawaii, and that's a whole nother level of surfing, and the waves are massive, and you're tripping for sure. You're scared. There's coral reef. There's big scary locals that don't want you to take their waves, and it's just such a different ball game. So that's the hairy stuff. If you can prove yourself there and surf good in those conditions, that's when you're people consider you someone to be a good surfer.
All right,
and
let's get into it on that note then. There's always, I'm sure there's a couple. We could talk about a couple if you got some 5s and 6s, but are there any really extreme circumstances that you look back on that you could tell us a pretty good, story of experience that
I have a couple crazy stories. I don't know how, we can get into it pretty good on this podcast, right? We can talk
about fucking anything.
Okay. All right.
You can say what you want, do what you want. We don't give a fuck what anybody else wants. Just go for it.
My best travel story is I was going to Indonesia, and I was there for a month actually. And then I went to South Africa, and I was flying back into Indonesia. And you know how Bali and Indo in general is they're super strict with drugs. Like if you're doing drugs, or if you have weed, or if you have any sort of narcotics on you, you're getting buried in an Indonesian prison, or, you know, you're not coming out.
Been some
So
good news about that too.
yeah, there's a bunch of stories you hear and all that stuff. So me knowing that, like I was clean as a whistle. I didn't have anything on me. I don't do much of that anyways. And so coming back into Bali, and they start secondary screening me, telling me like, hey, we found drug residue on your bags, and we're going to take you into secondary screening. And my head's just starting to spin. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? Because I don't have anything. And this is getting real. Like these, airport officials are like talking to each other and this and that. So they take me into the back room, and they're like, oh shit. Yeah, we found some drugs residue all over your bag, and we're going to want to search you. And so I'm like, next thing you know, they're telling me to strip down naked, and they want to do a
cavity search.
Cavity search. I mean, they didn't want to insert anything in there, but they wanted me to spread my ass cheeks wide and show them that I didn't have drugs in my ass. And that, so I was in this back of the Indo airport, felt like a prison, and I was spreading my ass cheeks wide to these Indonesian officials, showing them that I didn't have drugs. And I was false, thinking like they planted something in my bag. They're trying to frame me, and they're just fucking with me at this point. And then sure enough, I didn't have anything in my asshole, of course, and I didn't have anything in my bag. So I just kept denying it. And then finally let me go after like a couple hours of interrogation. And that was like the scariest moment of travel for me.
You don't have to feel so bad about that story, because my brother smuggled pot in his ass crack to my wedding in Connecticut. That's a nice story for everybody to know about. And I'm sure he would like really look. And this is before pot wasn't legal, and he was like unapologetic about it. I was in that hotel. I was like, "Where'd you get that?" He's like, "Oh yeah." He's pissed off. He's like, "What am I? I'm out here for 4 days. Oh, you're supposed to like be without like. I need this, man. This is like the shame on them for creating rules against him that he wouldn't be able to." So, anyways, but we never got searched. With the limo ride to the airport, the everything was like, smooth sailing. But it's different when you're in Bali, I guess.
Meet the Bolo Pack, the ultimate travel companion that transforms into a hammock, a pop-up tent, and even a cooler. Whether you're hiking, camping, or chilling at the beach, the Bolo Pack has you covered. First up, the Bolo Pack is a sleek, compact backpack, perfect for day trips or long adventures. Need a break? With a simple pull, the Bolo Pack transforms into a relaxing hammock, perfect for catching your breath during hikes. Planning to spend the night? The Bolo Pack also converts into a pop-up tent, giving you shelter wherever you go. And the best part? The Bolo Pack doubles as a cooler, keeping your food and drinks fresh for hours. Let me show you how easy it is to switch between modes. First, the hammock. Just a few simple steps, and you're ready to relax. Next, the pop-up tent for quick shelter setup. And finally, the cooler function, ensuring you stay refreshed on the go. From day hikes to weekend getaways, the Bolo Pack adapts to your needs. Whether you're chilling, camping, or keeping your snacks cool, ready to upgrade your travel game? Get your Bolo Pack today and take your adventures to the next level. Link in the description.
So, did you ever find out what the residue was from?
I don't know. I think they were just trying to like fuck with me, really. Like, I think they just, I don't know. I was tripping out thinking that they were going to bury me in some dirty ass prison. But that was a scary moment of traveling.
So, okay, let's talk about surfing. Let's get into a surfing story. You got one that stands out in your mind that's like really intense? As
far as like almost drowning or like sharks or like winning a contest or what?
All three of those things are pretty enticing. Let's do a medley. I know that you said you had a lot of, through another interview, you said you had like a lot of trouble with sharks in Africa. Is that the most trouble you had with sharks?
I mean, there's sharks around Africa, but I haven't had like a run in there where I was like staring at one straight on. But, living here in New Smyrna Beach in Florida, it's technically the shark bite capital of the world. But the sharks are small for the most part, 4, 5, 6 feet, but they're still packing a punch, and people get bit all the time. So like surfing here a lot, that I have run-ins with them all the time. Like I have a few videos of a drone and stuff over top of me, and there's like legitimately like 10 sharks all under me. And I'm kind of, there's some where you know it and some where you're just thinking you're just a normal surf day, and then you're just surrounded by sharks. So,
and you're surrounded.
Sometimes and sometimes not. Like it's just part of the thing that you sign up for here. If you're going to be a surfer, like you're going to be around sharks pretty much every time you surf. So that has built a little bit of a comfortability with them. But like you're saying in South Africa, those sharks are, they're a different beast. Those are great whites. If they get a hold of you, you're not coming out in too good of a state.
Yeah, and they're different. They like to breach the water. You said you've seen a breach, I think, one time, or a shark breach.
Yeah, I've seen shark great white breach in South Africa, and I've seen it in California as well.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about South Africa. That's like where they breach commonly, out there for some reason.
Yeah, they film like the Shark Week out there in Cape Town, and they like do a bunch of the studies on the great whites, and those things breach when they're breach, and you are like see the shots they have of the boat. That is a crazy looking animal.
We've had another person on other podcasts that talks about sharks. He specializes in sharks. The mentality of a shark, and that's all he does. He's specialized in that. And you're on a surfboard. It's kind of like they're more apt to probably go after you because they don't have they're not entroped in the water. They're not looking out, because this guy is one of those guys. He's like, he'll put his hand on the nose of a great white,
Screw that.
Yeah. I'm like, he'll kind of hypnotize them almost. But you guys are kind of sitting ducks in a sense because their curiosity for the board and kind of take a nip at it and go, what is that? And I mean, that's kind of like when you're sitting out there waiting for a swell or waiting for the rhythm of the waves to come in. You feel vulnerable there sometimes? Yeah,
there's a big vulnerability to sitting there in a certain area in the world, knowing that it is great white infested, and it's kind of a spooky feeling. Like at any moment you could just be submarined and be, popped up freaking into the mouth of a great white. Like I was just in Santa Cruz this past week, Santa Cruz, California. And they say October, November is what do they call it? The mating time, or the time when they're the most active. Yeah. And so like we were surfing a spot, and then the guy said like the day before, I was on the binoculars and I saw this big freaking submarine great white cruising through the lineup. So like it's on your mind in certain areas, like pretty bad. And you're rolling the dice. Like you could at any moment get popped by a 15-foot great white, and it's game over. But like I said at the beginning, it's kind of what you sign up for, and we love surfing, so it's just part of it.
Yeah. All right, Santa Cruz, that's near Mavericks. You ever surf Mavericks?
Never surfed Mavericks, no.
What's the I've seen the documentary. I knew. Tell everybody, like, what's the dynamics that you always hear about it, and why is it so dangerous, or whatever? What's the special dynamic about it?
Yeah, it's a huge, the North Pacific swells march down from up near Alaska, and it just like Mavericks especially like really accentuates the swell, and it's like this huge 50, 60 foot wave, and it just explodes on this shelf of reef. And it's kind of one of the like historic big wave spots in the world. And they say there's like an underwater canyon where like some of the best surfers, big wave surfers in the world, have drowned down there because you get stuck in this canyon below, and it's like a waterfall going down under the freaking ocean. You can't get back up. So it's taken a couple lives of some big wave guys, and it's hardcore. There's a big wave community of guys who like live and breathe and chase that. And someone was asking me about it the other day. It's kind of like a different sport. It's almost sort of like a cross country and a track. You know what I mean? Like you got the short distance runners and the long distance runners. So it's kind of a different, it's separated. So I'm not really in on that stuff. More like this competing and the more like performance sort of surfing. But those guys are nuts. They go to Nazaré in Portugal, and they go to Jaws and Maui and Mavericks. Those are like the three big wave spots, and they're kamikazes. Like they freaking send themselves on these huge, massive Yeah, it's
Gonna
insane
take
to
a
watch.
chopper in there. Yeah, well, I forgot the big name surfer that perished in the Mavericks. It's a Hawaiian guy. Do you remember his name?
Mark Fu.
Mark Fu. Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
And the people were like surprised. They were like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that happened."
yeah. He passed away there, and as well as Sion Molosky. He was another big wave Hawaiian guy, and
Both at Mavericks.
yeah, it's taken a few of them. The wave's deadly.
Let's talk about a highlight for you. Which competition really, harkens like, the best memories.
I'd say the best competition memory would be I actually won the hometown event, Virginia Beach. It's like one of the most long-standing events in the world, and I grew up going to it as a kid, and all my friends and family were there, and I won it actually when it was like 8 years ago now, and the whole town basically like celebrated with me. My friend owns a bar there. He had an open bar for all my friends and family, and two of my friends actually went to jail that night. So that was a pretty funny story the next day.
That's great.
And basically burned the town down. So it was a good memory.
That sounds like a lot of fun, actually. I see a video dub of that.
Yeah.
So where's your career at right now? What's going on?
I'm still doing the competitive thing. And I was just actually in Santa Cruz for an event this past week, the Coldwater Classic, and I actually won the event.
Nice.
And that was a big event for me just because there's a lot of eyes on it in America. It's like one of the staple events here. So that, I've had mixed feelings about competing or how much longer I want to do all that, but feeling like I can still win contests. So it makes me want to keep going for now and stay in the thick of it.
Why would you stop as long as you can compete,
Because you travel around the world and I'll sound pretty spoiled, but you go to these places, you've been a bunch and you lose and the waves aren't the best. And you're kind of like, I don't know if I'm beating a dead horse here a little bit, or, there's more to
because also
life.
it could, you've done it. It can get boring for you.
Yeah. I wouldn't say boring. It just kind of gets like, I don't know. Surfing's a weird sport because you compete and everyone, it's so hard to win. There's so many good surfers and you're always losing, because there's 100 guys in an event. So you're never really winning, hardly.
Right.
And I don't know. It just takes a toll on you.
I bet.
Yeah.
Now eventually you're going to retire. You have a long-term plan of like what that looks like?
Yeah. I've been actually working towards my pilot's license on the side of all the surf stuff the last few years.
Yeah. Because you need something else that's it's just as dangerous or just as thrilling, or I get it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You need something to keep the adrenaline.
Exactly.
So I think that would be the next step for me, something in the aviation world, whether that's a pilot for an airline or for like I have a few friends that fly corporate jets and they're like hanging out with their feet up. The phone doesn't ring for 3 months and they're getting paid over, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like that life looks pretty good for the next step for me. So that could be something.
There's another friend of mine who's on the podcast, I think it's Chuck Patterson. He was a surfer and then he got into like, stunt piloting, for some reason. It was like a transition for him, like that made sense. East Coast guy also.
Yeah. That would be cool. Got to learn how to fly first before you're stunt piloting, I guess. All
right. Well, you're living a full life, man. I mean, it sounds fantastic. Tell everybody how they can find out more about you.
Yeah. You could just go on my Instagram, Michael Dunphy, Dunphy, and kind of stay active on there. And yeah, thanks for having me on and having a chat with you.
My pleasure, man. You're living an adventure and it sounds fun. And I know you've been doing it for a long time, but everybody listening here, and yours included, I'd like to be at that bar and then kind of like, there's some of that too. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was quite the time. Everybody was feeling good for sure.
I'll continue to enjoy. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, right on. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to Bolotor.com to check out the amazing Bolo pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.